When I say kids don't know how to read, I mean it. In the USA, children are graduating from high school unable to read. We have to build back the trust on all sides if we want to have that parent-teacher collaboration. And parents need to understand that they're their child's teacher too. Teachers talk about how it's tough to get kids to watch anything with a plot because they're used to this short form, brain rot, skibbity toilet type nonsense video. There's a ton of research around one-to-one tutoring, and it's the highest caliber way to improve student performance.
Well, good morning there, Hannah Ward. Thank you so much for joining me today on the Ridiculously Human podcast.
Yeah, good morning. Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
No, it's an absolute pleasure. We just had like a nice long chat, and yeah, so I feel like I know you super well already. So thanks for
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, thank you.
No worries. So one of the cool things that where you're based is you're based in the Ozarks, right? And like,
Yes.
I guess for anybody who's maybe watched a little bit of TV in their life, like the Netflix series, The Ozarks was like one of the best they've ever had. And I was just kind of wondering, is life in the Ozarks kind of like what the Bird family experienced?
Yeah, a little bit. A little bit. Um, if if you hang out with the wrong people, it can be. And so it's not like that for me. It's it's really slow and nice. We do like to hang out on the lake though, and that's great. The Ozarks was actually filmed, I think, in North Carolina or Georgia, which had us pretty upset
Oh,
because
no ways. That's so
yeah, we're
what?
yeah, because we're pretty partial to our local lakes, and we were slightly devastated. But the movie Winter's Bone was filmed with Jennifer Lawrence from The Hunger Games. It was filmed here locally, and we actually had some local actors and actresses that I grew up working with. My childhood director, Beth Doman, was in it, and that was really cool. So anytime I point someone to like a really authentic, like what it's like in the Ozarks, understanding the like crime poverty cycle in the Ozarks situation movie. It's that one, Winter's Bone.
Okay, cool. That's classic. And like you said, you actually grew up as a child actress and singer in the Ozarks yourself.
I did,
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah, that was a really cool experience. I grew up in the Historic Landers Theater in Springfield, Missouri. It is the coolest place ever. Anyone who grew up around that, we get emotional talking about it. It's just a really special place. It's supposed to be one of the most haunted places in this area. I never saw a ghost. I really wanted to. I tried. I tried very hard. We had ghost tours. I was always waiting for the ghost. I've heard from very reliable people that it's haunted though, so I believe them. And just a gorgeous, beautiful, beautiful theater, and it's community run with the best people, amazing world-class educational program. And when I left the Ozarks and actually moved to Salt Lake City, Utah, and went to a performing arts school there and started doing vocal training with some members of the Mormon Tabernacle Choir. Like it, they were great, but it didn't compare to our little local community theater here in the Ozarks. I mean, they're just like world class, top notch,
Oh,
top
wow.
notch.
That's amazing. That's amazing. And talking about like ghosts and haunted things, you actually posted something online, which I have to ask you about, right? You
Yeah.
said that your family was cursed by the Archbishop of Glasgow in 1524, and it's a super
Yeah.
long curse that you basically are still kind of like, I don't know, cursed by.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it might be the longest curse. I don't want to, well, I'll just take it. I think I'll say it is. I'll say we win. It's the longest curse. And a lot of people ask why we were cursed. And I think that we were cursed for all the reasons that someone could be cursed in Scotland at the time. Like they were really naughty. They were just like the worst of the worst. They committed all the crimes and they loved stealing livestock. They lived right on the Scottish English border and they fought on both sides. My family, they were the Armstrongs, and there were a lot of border Scots. And the Archbishop of Glasgow, he got annoyed and cursed us and in the churches. And my family didn't go to the churches, so they didn't hear the curse for a while. But then when it finally trickled down to us that we were cursed, they thought it was super funny. And um, I heard about this curse growing up for a really long time. Um, and it eventually got in, I think it was about 2001, got carved onto this massive stone in Carlisle, England, the curse. And my cousins still visit it and flip at the bird and say unkind things to the stone. And it's a big, it's a big family thing. Everyone's very annoyed with the curse. And we we found out a few years back that we have something called a BRCA1 mutation, and that's a um, breast cancer mutation. It's actually hereditary breast and ovarian cancer, and this this really ties into my work with literacy. Actually, I lost my maternal grandfather when I was 9 years old, and of cancer, and his father had passed from cancer, and that's how a lot of my family members pass, looking back at our family tree. And we know that because my family kept amazing records in our family Bible. And one of the last things that my grandfather did before he passed away was he restored our family Bible by going back to our clan lands in Scotland. And he went there, and the first thing that he noticed was that everyone there looked like him. They were really, really tall. He was a very tall man, and he had long red hair that he was very proud of. And he he talked about the curse a little bit, and they're like, "Oh yeah, there's a curse." And he restored the family Bible, and we were able to look at these genealogical records and talk to doctors, and we got some genetic testing done. And I can't blame the Archbishop of Glasgow. I mean, there's people outside of the Armstrong family that have this genetic condition, but the curse now has a name. And um, we got the genetic testing done, and we're now able to do something about it. And so I kind of think that the curse is a blessing. I mean, it was this family lore, and it was a lot of fun to talk about, and it drew us together. And I think it saved our lives, honestly, because we were able to, when I first learned about it and when I first talked to my oncology team and my genetic counselor, they explained to me that I had up to an 87% chance of getting breast cancer in my lifetime. And it would be highly aggressive and difficult to treat. And I had um, an up to 40% chance of getting ovarian cancer, and it could be triggered by pregnancy. And I was 22 years old and devastated. And it was just really hard to hear. But with the help of my medical team, I was able to get some prophylactic surgeries. And I'm now sitting at a 2% risk for breast cancer, which is below the national average. And that's what literacy can do for us. So I love the curse. I think it's great. I think it's great that we learned about it, and I really appreciate that that's something that my grandpa did in his last days for us, he that he took that journey and restored that family Bible for us and got that genealogical record locked down so that we could figure out this mystery.
Sure. What is a family Bible? Sorry.
Yeah, so it is like it's a Bible, like it's an actual Bible. And then we kept our family tree in it with the births and the deaths. And that, and we found out within that that people were dying really young, and especially the women in the family. And a lot of the time we were seeing that the cause of death, it was, they weren't calling it cancer because I mean, it went back hundreds of years. We had an amazing family history, but it was, I don't know what they were calling it. I have family members in the medical field who explained it to me, but it was things that they called cancer at that time that they were able to trace it back because of that family history that was kept in the family Bible to understand that.
Interesting. And have you got any like brothers or sisters yourself that yeah.
I have I have one baby sister and she's 9 years younger than me. And she is a horse trainer and she's amazing.
Yeah, and she had like also this. I mean, she's obviously got the same information as you around this curse and stuff. As she, yeah, what
She
has she done with that
does.
information?
So she's been tested and she's going there's a lot of things that you can do with it. I went totally gung ho with the surgeries, and part of the reason that I did that is I had a baby at the time, my son, and it can be triggered by pregnancy, and I wanted more babies, and I didn't want to, talking to my doctors, I didn't want to make any difficult decisions around cancer treatment um, during pregnancies.
Hmm.
And in support groups, I talked to a lot of other young moms who found their cancer during the second trimester, the third trimester, and it was tough. And so I thought, like, okay, I ended up having a prophylactic double mastectomy. So both of
Whoa.
my breasts were surgically removed, and I just like took the risk away. And that's about as extreme as you can go with it. So I went to one extreme, and my sister is going the monitoring route, which is also totally valid. And she's just super focused on her career and the horses and everything right now. And kids aren't like on the horizon for her right now. And that's also something you can do. I mean, there's just like tons of options with it when you
Hmm.
have that information. And we have had the full spectrum with it with our family members now that we know. And just the fact that that's on our medical record when you go in for a checkup or a physical, like they know to look for that. And there's certain types of monitoring that typically wouldn't even be offered to women until we were in our late 30s or early 40s that are offered to us right away,
Hmm.
like as teenagers. And that's life-saving for us.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of good stuff that does happen in kind of medicine. You know, there's obviously a lot of like nonsense that goes on in that world as well. But
Yeah.
I've also had like one of those genetic DNA sort of tests that tells you all about your hereditary and where you're from and diseases that you might need to watch out for and stuff. Almost the same as you. It's like, and I found that
Yeah.
super interesting. Like it's also kind of a bit hairy. You're like, geez, do I even want to know this
Sure.
stuff? Because sometimes
Yes.
just being a bit sort of naive about it is almost like better or easier, but also it's stupid in
Yeah.
some ways.
I've
Yeah,
I've never done the full spectrum one. And it's so funny, and it probably, yeah, that probably sounds silly after going on this big like rant about how valuable it's been for me. I've only done the targeted testing for my one mutation because it was so highly advised to our family from genetic counselors because of everyone who was being actively treated for cancer in our family. I've never done like the full spectrum, like for the like risk for Alzheimer's and all of that.
mm,
I think because I've been so um like my treatment plan for BRCA sort of ate up about 2 or 3 years of my life
yeah,
that I don't know. I don't know if I want to dive into more or
yeah.
not, but it was also so valuable for me. It is tricky. It's a tricky thing to navigate. Like because information can be really valuable, but
Yeah.
it's also like Pandora's box
Yeah.
once you open it up, you know?
No, totally. I mean, for me, like I know that Alzheimer's was a high risk. Um,
Right.
there was, I can't remember the other ones exactly, but I do remember reading it, going, okay, cool. Well, now I've got this information. I need to use it. And I've always been like pretty healthy, but I like totally cleaned up my act. And you just want to minimize the kind of risk of that possibly happening, at least, yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
Whatever
Yeah.
the future's written in the stars already, but like, if you can maybe try delay something or whatever, then you've got to do that, I guess.
It's a good motivation for healthy habits for sure.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So, and a lot of our conversation is actually going to revolve around like reading, literacy, and homeschooling. And like I,
Yeah.
I love the homeschooling part of it. And there's obviously like this real trend now that's going towards homeschooling, right? For various reasons and obvious reasons, I think. But you wrote that you had like such an awesome time at school, like in public school, and
Yeah.
had great teachers, and you loved it. And I had the same, right? Like I honestly, I loved school so much, like best thing ever. And I kind of feel a little bit sorry for sort of maybe kids these days, because it does actually feel a bit different. So even, like I have friends
Yeah.
that are teachers now. I have a friend that owns a school, his own school, and it's definitely is different, like parents are different,
Yeah.
certain things in teaching are different. But yeah, I was just wondering, like you obviously you're deep into this, you've been a teacher at all different levels. Like how did we get to kind of this stage where we are now, where like people are like, hang on, I don't want to send my kid to school because I'm kind of worried about what they're going to teach them. It's crazy.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a really good question. And part of the reason why I enjoyed school as much as I did was I had a bit of an offbeat school experience, and I was in the public school system in the USA, but I was in special programs within that system. And I was in a bit of an experimental cohort that looks closer to what we're seeing in certain charter programs, or what I hope that we start to see more of in the future. And I was in a gifted program starting in the second grade, where I got to go to a specialized school that was attached to our local university 1 day a week for a full day. And there weren't grades, and we learned about Shakespeare and robotics, and I had just amazing teachers that when I see them out at the park still, I just like, we recognize each other and I run and we give each other hugs, and just like they're lifelong just mentors to me. And it was a really, really wonderful experience. And then once I was 11, I was a part of something called a radical acceleration program for gifted students. It was, and I say that, and I always like to say that with the caveat that I was the dumbest kid in the smart kid program. And like, I mean that.
You mean
I
you only had an
definitely,
IQ of 150, not like 170 like the
oh,
others?
like, no, like, not even close, not even close. Like, the people that I was with, they're, what, one of my good friends, he's in the mathematics department for like an elite university and here at the US. And there's, when I ask what a lot of people are doing now, they're like, oh, I can't talk about that, it's classified. And it's like, oh geez. And I'm just like, I'm just the little homeschool mom in the Ozarks. So I don't know, I was like the mascot. It was cool that I got to like see what the other kids were doing. So I got to observe the smart kids. And it so we started high school when we were 11. So we were with 14 to 18-year-olds when we were 11, and got to basically skip over 3 grades
Hmm.
and condense them down a bit. And um, the other kids in my group took advantage of that by taking a lot of like science courses and math courses. And I took a lot of graphic design courses and theater courses, and that's what I spent my time doing. I maxed out all of the art classes at the local high school, and um, by the by the time we were 13, 14 years old, our group of 30, we got to take this amazing class, full year class with a former professor, a woman named Dr. Thompson. And it was a full year humanities class. And we got to talk about the hero's journey. And we got to do a like full year just learning about all of human art and literature and just a full spectrum humanities course. And I'm I'm currently working on my doctorate. I've been in a lot of college and I've taken a lot of college courses, and nothing has ever matched that course. I mean, she was just amazing and so passionate about her field, and all of that to say that's not the typical public school experience. So I loved it. And after all of that, I got to go to a performing arts school and I got to study opera and Shakespearean theater. And that was also through the public school system, through a charter school, through the Utah School Choice program. And this, when people think American public schools, like nothing that I did was standard. And everything that I did is when people talk about an ideal school choice framework, I was kind of the guinea pig for that. And I really benefited from it and I loved it. And I would love for other kids to have that experience. Um, but in talking to those teachers that I had, because I was ready, like I was gung ho ready for my kids to have the same experience. I was so excited and meeting those teachers at the park and talking to them. And they were saying, they're cutting the funding. They're cutting the funding and it's going away, and they're cutting the art programs, and we don't get to do Shakespeare anymore, and we we don't get to do the arts focus anymore, and we don't get to do the read aloud time and the group discussion anymore and the critical thinking time, and everything's going screen based and everything's going app based, and it broke my heart. And I didn't know when talking to my, because I stayed connected. I stayed connected with a lot of my older teachers and mentors. And it I was scared to tell them that I planned on stepping away from my plan to be a classroom teacher and to homeschool. It felt like I was like dropping a bomb. And they were so relieved to hear it. And they're
Wow.
like, do it, do it. And it was this huge weight off my shoulders because I planned on teaching in the program that I went to. I was that in love with it. I never wanted to leave. I never wanted to leave.
Yeah.
And I, it's really unfortunate what what our schools have turned into because I know what they can be. I know what they can be, and I know how personalized they can be for every kid. And there's, there's the academic part, but then there's also the safety aspects. And then from that's on the student side, and that's also on the teacher side. That's also on the teacher side. And I talk to a lot of teachers as friends and as colleagues, and we don't we don't feel safe. We don't feel safe, and we don't feel like we have support to feel safe in
Yeah.
schools. And if the adults don't feel safe, it's really hard for parents sending their kids to feel like their kids are safe in that environment. And I think that that's why you're seeing a lot of former classroom teachers going to homeschooling. And a big moment for me was um, I was sitting with a group of moms one day, and I was chatting with one of them. Um, she was holding her baby, and her name sounded really familiar. And we were talking about homeschooling, and I found out that her husband was my former high school math teacher, and he was now a school principal in our area. And even though he was a school principal, they were homeschooling their kids.
Mm.
And we're seeing a lot of that. We're seeing a lot of that. Um, and I think that that just indicates, I don't know, it's, and what we see with that, it's not, we're in this in between time right now because that's a bridge, that's a bridge solution, like having a wife who's a teacher and being a school principal and then homeschooling your kids like split shift in the summer. That's not like a forever solution, that's like a crisis solution,
Yeah.
and we're in like crisis time right now. But I'm really optimistic that if we can realistically look at how broken the system is currently and not try to just like sweep it under the rug. And if we can realistically, optimistically look at how good the system can be and not just go like full doomer on it, that things can get really, really good. Because I've seen it really good and it
Mm.
can be really good. And I've seen it really good for like my school that I went to was, we had, most of our kids were on the free lunch program. And what that means in the US is that they were well below the poverty line. And we had kids all across the socioeconomic spectrum. We had kids just like, just from every race, from so many different countries, who had just like recently come here. We had a lot of teen parents. We had a nursery in the basement of our school. It was a massive school for all of the babies of the teen moms that were there and going to school. Um, we had a lot of gang members that came back to school and were like peacefully going to school with rival gang members, and it was working. And we were a 10-star school, and we had an international baccalaureate program, and we had fights on occasion. Like there were some altercations, but we never had a shooting. And I was a little 11-year-old girl, and I felt safe with this like massive student body. And so any excuse that I hear from people on like, well, it can't work because of this, it can't work because of this, it can't work because of this. It's like, no, I've seen it work. Like I've
Yeah.
seen it work. And we just have to, we have to try. And the reason why it worked in my school at the time was because we had strict disciplinary policies and we had high standards for the students.
Mm.
We had high disciplinary standards, and we had good curriculum where we expected actual critical thinking from students and actual learning and actual reading and actual writing. And kids weren't just passed through onto the next grade. I mean, we had 19, 20, 21 year olds there when students are supposed to graduate at 17, 18, because it's like, you haven't made the grades yet. You're not ready to graduate yet. Come back, come back, come back. And that just doesn't really happen anymore.
Yeah, it seems to be like, we've gotten maybe a little bit soft, and we just
Yeah.
allow too much to happen. And like thinking about, we definitely do. We've sort of just bent over and go, yeah, kind of do what you want. Like you said, you guys, you're scared as teachers to even go into classes because of the way you're spoken to, physical threats, and then nothing happens, as a result, like of a kid shouting at you, like, cheapers. When I was at school, there's no ways you would. I mean, you had to call everyone's like teachers sir and madam. They walked into a classroom, you stood up, like the whole class stood up. Like schooling in South
Oh,
Africa
I
was
love
super
that.
strict when I was at school, like really. And this is just like a normal government school, right? Um,
Yeah.
and but it definitely has changed, and I think there's been, I don't know if the how the crack appeared, but there's definitely some responsibility lacking, I think, on the parent side. That's a lot. That's a
Yeah.
lot of the messaging I'm hearing from guys that are in school. Like, like if something goes wrong, right, then well, no, it's the school's fault. And it's the teacher's fault. No, no, but hang on. I mean, how can this be the school's fault when your kid is brought in a bottle of vodka on a Monday morning into the school? Like, no, no, sorry, you have to take some responsibility as a parent.
Right. And and there's a lot of layers to that. And it is a situation, and it happened quickly. It happened quickly. I'm young. I was born in 1994. So this school system that I'm talking about, it wasn't that long ago. And if teachers were calling home to mom and dad, like, whoa, that's a big deal. If it's
Exactly.
gotten to that point, that's a
Yeah.
big deal. And, mom and dad would back up the teachers
Yeah.
because, and now the parents really fight back
Mm,
against what the teachers are saying. And I think that that's probably a symptom of just generally eroded public trust in the educational system. And I don't blame the parents with that, because if you're a parent and you're seeing a situation where you have children graduating from high school in this generation that don't know how to read, how can you trust anything that's
mm,
happening in that school? And how do you trust what the teacher's saying? How do you trust the administration? And I I don't think that I don't think that the teachers were, and when I say that the kids don't know how to read, I mean it. Like in the USA, children are graduating from high school unable to read. They can't look at a word and sound it out. They were taught to not do that. They were taught to memorize the shapes of words. They were taught to look at a word, look at the first letter, and guess what that word could be. So if it starts with a P, the word might be pickle or pumpkin. And they are taught to look at the picture that's by the word, and you just have to hope that there's a picture there. And if neither of those things work, then you just skip over the word. And that's not how you read. And a lot of parents learned this during COVID, during
mm,
lockdowns, watching these virtual classes with their kids and seeing how teachers have been taught how to teach, because it is top down. I mean, as a teacher in the public school system, you are told what curriculum you're going to use by the school district, by the administration, and it's sold in bulk. And it's such a top down thing that it's kind of hard to find the root of the problem. It's kind of a black box. And I I look into this a lot, and it's hard for me to even figure out, like, where is the root of this? Who started this? And the parents are watching this and they're like, this is not how I was taught how to read. Of course my child has reading problems. And while my it's so weird how my child is being taught math. This is not how I was taught math. Of course my child is having math problems. And if that's happening academically, then it's hard to trust the schools with other things.
mm,
And I see that trust. Um, and I think that we have to build back the trust on all sides if we want to have that parent teacher collaboration. And parents need to understand that they're their child's teacher too, and that it is a collaboration between the parent as the teacher and the teacher as really the assistant teacher. That's a temporary position. Most children have a new teacher every year, and that's a position for only a few months. And within there at my university that I attended, there was a really neat way that they set it up. I got my master's degrees at a university called Western Governors University here in the USA, and it's kind of a future forward-facing university. It's self-paced and it's really cool. And you have a degree mentor that follows you through your entire degree, and then a course mentor that is like your professor that follows you through each course. And I think of parents as kind of the degree mentor, like they're with you, they're with your child through your whole life. I mean, from birth into adulthood, and you are the specialist for your child. You're your child's first, best, and primary teacher with everything. And then you have these course mentors, these teachers, and your child might take a tennis lesson or might take a math class or might be in the third grade or whatever it is. But you really need to be able to communicate back and forth and have that trust with that teacher that they know what they're talking about. And you have to work together as a team and not be oppositional with each other. And I think it's going to take a lot to build back that trust in the American public school system because of how much systematic failure we've been experiencing with this past generation. And I mean, it really breaks my heart.
Yeah, yeah. It seems like there's so many sort of forces that, like you said, it's hard to sort of identify. Okay, cool. How did this exactly happen? When did it happen? Because there's lots of creaks in the system, and all systems like the what how teachers are taught to teach, um, the actual system of like how all of us now almost have to work, to provide for our family, mother and father. So like everyone's really busy and they don't have time to maybe do some of the stuff that, like you were saying, you are as a parent, you really are the first teacher. Um, and the school teacher is kind of a supplementary one. But you don't, because you're so busy, you don't have time to do that. Um,
Right.
and then there's also other things that are thrown in there, like teachers that are kind of crazy, and are teaching you these weird ideologies, and like kids are now super confused. Then you add in like, I guess, social media and like kids having access to phones and all these things, just like this
Right.
bucket of things that are like,
Yeah.
it's like, okay, cool, let's just light this bucket of fireworks and flip and see what happens. And that's literally
Yeah.
the problem is like, okay, no, we mustn't light it. What we must do is we must take a lot of these things out and let's try to sort out the problem. But it doesn't seem like that's going to happen anytime soon, really. You have to go yourself, basically.
Parenting feels a bit, I I think about that game that used to be on all computers when I was a kid, Minesweeper,
Uh-huh.
where you clicked on the little boxes.
Yes.
And yeah, it is just kind of everything. And it's hard. It's hard to balance not having too much anxiety about it because that can also be harmful.
Mm.
So that's another bomb, right? Like having anxiety and having your kids feel that. Um, but also like, okay, so we need to be like hyper aware of the food and we need to be hyper aware of the water and the air quality. And so that's just like it's like basic, like look, we're going up like Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? And um when I mean just like scrolling through social media, right? Especially in like the parenting spaces, I can't think of one thing right now that isn't like poison as far as like within the conversation of something that you have to be aware of. And when I talk to older people in my family, um, it's like, was this something that you had to be stressed about? And they're like, no, like we didn't have to think about it. Like you just like feed your kids. It's like food from the grocery store or the farm that we grew up on. And you just like send your kid to the school that, and then they come back knowing math and reading. And then they go into town and get a job because there's jobs in town once you hit that age. And then there's a house to buy. And it was just like a really basic, you have to be really creative now, and I I find it energizing. And maybe that's just total cope. Maybe maybe that's my way of coping with it. I I choose to see it as exciting and energizing, and it's kind of like those Ninja Warrior shows where you're jumping over the obstacles and everything, but it can be incredibly overwhelming, and it would be so nice if there could be like basics that you could trust. And I think that um education and like base level literacy is one of those basics because it touches everything. There's it touches health, and it touches like how do you understand food labels, and how do you understand air quality reports, and how do you like make these intelligent choices in a super complex world if you don't have base level literacy. You can't. And even if you are a highly literate person, it is stressful and it's really hard to understand what's going on. And maybe ignorance is bliss. I don't know, but it's tough. It's tough.
Yeah. Yeah, like it's weird because we're talking about this, right? Like we are aware, okay, cool, of what is going on, and like, oh, everyone must be too, but I actually think almost half the problem is like actually so many people are not aware of maybe what is going on and the impacts of certain things. Like you've written a bit about, say, Coco Melon, the show, and when
Yeah.
you dive deep into Coco Melon, it's like this is not good, you know what I mean? But like it's by far the highest watch program almost on YouTube, even like more than Mr. Beast sort of thing. Um,
Right.
and but it's terrible. Like I mean, I remember when we were traveling a little bit, when we were in Thailand, it was the first time we ever came across Cocomelon, and we never let our daughter watch anything really, but we were just like, oh,
Mhm.
she's getting a bit older now, let her watch something, and we put on Cocomelon, we're like, oh, this is cool, just songs and stuff like that. But she became a zombie in front of Cocomelon, and then
Yeah.
afterwards she would be like, it'd be almost impossible to kind of like try get her off there, or and I was like, no, this is not normal. And then when we went a bit sort of deeper, like to just read about it and stuff, we're like, that's that show gone, that's for sure, and there's not just that show, but there's lots of them that are like it, like so these days, if my daughter watches something, it's like a show from the 1950s or 60s or 80s or something like that,
Right.
where on TV the screens are much slower, the colors are different, the
Yeah.
changeovers are slower, the story is just more innocent, and
Right.
yeah, it's, I don't know, there's this, yeah, the world is in this weird place with certain things right now.
It's really calculated. And we had the exact same experience with Coco Melon, where there was like one song, I think it was the Five Little Speckled Frog song, and my kids thought that it was so cute. And they were like, it was like they were little Manchurian candidates or something with like the cocoa melon, like little melon at the beginning. And as soon as they heard the bloop cocoa melon, they would just like turn with all the songs like, okay, this is freaking me out. I don't like this. And I was reading more about it. It's like, oh, they make it like that. It's a precision thing. Because in the 70s and 80s and 90s, they weren't trying to get 5-hour streams that kids were watching for YouTube revenue. I mean, that wasn't a goal. And they weren't doing the distraction experiments with kids to try to make them not look away from the screen. And, there's a I've talked to parents, and I've read teachers talk about a lot too. When we were growing up, if there was a day where we had a substitute teacher, or if it was like a special day at the end of the year, I remember at the end of the year, and we had a history, world history class, and in high school. And at the end of the year, we got to have a 2-day viewing of a Bollywood film called Jodha Akbar. And it's this like long, epic, historical movie, and we were so excited. It was the highlight of the year. And now teachers talk about like, I can't get these kids to watch a 5 minute video. I could never get them to watch a movie. And we were so in to this to this like long Bollywood historical film. And I teachers talk about how it's tough to get kids to watch anything with a plot because they're used to this like short form brain rot skibbity toilet type like nonsense video, and they it's hard to even get them to like watch a whole SpongeBob episode because it's plot based. Like that's too slow now. And my kids are at the age where there's a YouTuber, art YouTuber that we had watched some of their tutorials before through the years and followed some of their tutorials. And I try to do like we call it like cognitive security training. And I like to frame it for them like we're doing like Jedi training, you guys, because it's like we're living in the future and it's weird out there and they think it's super fun. And I was explaining to them, so we noticed that as the years progressed, this YouTuber that we really liked, their videos started changing. Their little art tutorial videos, and started doing that fast-paced edit and the bright flashing lights and putting in like the reaction shots. And they're like, "Oh no." And my son's like, "She's giving it the Coco Melon treatment." And totally recognize that. And it's like, oh, she's trying to keep our attention on it. And I think that once they get to that age to where you can kind of explain it to them, like kids think it's cool to know the inside baseball and to like look under the hood of it a little bit.
Yeah,
Like they think it's cool to see that. But when they're little, they they don't get that,
mm,
and they're just like locked in, just mesmerized to it. And that's the key brain development time. And
yeah,
that's when it can be really destructive. And man, it is so easy. And that's also when parents are really, really tired. I mean, that's the hardest time for us. And that is the like squishiest brain time for kids when their brains are, I don't know, it's just like the most vulnerable time for everybody. And it's tough. It's tough.
yeah, yeah. I mean, they talk a lot about those first 7 years, like how they
Yeah.
are the most important of your whole life, and they kind of like define a lot of who future you is, how you act, how you behave, what your likes are, your dislikes, etc., etc. So, like, because that brain is in that sponge sort of zone, for all those years.
Yeah.
And we have to be really cognizant of that, and like very disciplined as well as parents, to and find that like big dad energy and big mom energy, like
Yeah.
when it comes to go, okay, cool, let's just chuck the TV on or the iPad or whatever, or if they have a phone, whatever. Like, no, 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 no. This is now why you an adult and you have kids. Like, this is where you really step up to the plate, and you go, okay, cool, I'm tired, whatever, but my future
Yeah.
kid needs me now, like I'm not, I'm gonna go play with them, I'm gonna take them for a walk, I'm gonna do something creative with them, etc., etc. Like, that is so important for us to realize as parents.
Yeah.
um and it's such a short time, it's only a few years sort of thing, especially those early years, like just suck it up and
Yeah.
go do something way more creative and constructive with them than chuck that TV on.
And it's hard. It's hard, but it's worth the effort.
Mm,
And if you do turn the TV on, consider turning on something boring.
yes.
Um, that's that's my biggest piece of advice with that. We we do a lot of Bob Ross in our house. The Bob Ross painting videos.
Oh, cool.
And so if the kids do, because if something is on the TV that's boring, then there can't be something more exciting on the TV. And I'm pretty when I'm posting on X and when I'm posting about screen time, I think that people assume that like my kids have never seen a screen before, and I'm really like unrealistic with screen time. And we're a super screen friendly family. Like we do TV, and like I have like big Mario Kart tournaments with my kids, and we love to game and everything. But I'm a big fan of boring television. we, we like to we like to keep it boring, and like exciting for us is like Little House on the Prairie, or like we might we've been discussing doing a Princess Bride movie night. That would be like pretty wild as far as exciting television goes. And it's a lot like, I don't know, I think that because, and that's a tough balance too, and I don't have the answer. What I'm trying with like my kid experiment right now, because we're just all experimenting, right? We're all trying to figure it out, and this is, we're all living in the future together. So what I'm trying with my kid experiment is um the boring TV thing, where they do have access to the screens, they do have access to TV, and it is a lot of like Reading Rainbow and Mr. Rogers and Bob Ross and nature documentaries and things like that. And they do learn quite a bit from it. And but they would rather do just about anything else. Like my youngest daughter is 5, and instead of watching TV yesterday, she's like, "Can I go like clean my room or something?" Just for fun, because it's just like so boring. And when we go out to eat or we're like somewhere with a TV, they just like don't even think to look at it because it's boring.
Mm.
Like screen equals boring to them. So that's what I'm trying. I don't know. We'll see how it works. And it's just like with any generation of kids, we're going to have to compare notes in 20 years
Yeah,
on,
for sure.
on what worked and what didn't work, and what, man, we don't even know what like technology traps and what cognitive security traps we're all falling into. And like with the Coco Melon thing, like we didn't know. We didn't know. I was like, oh, nursery rhymes, that's cool. Like these are the nursery rhymes that I sang during circle time at the little Montessori school that I was a classroom teacher at. Like I thought like this is the most innocent thing in the world. And we don't know. And that's I I'm hoping that one thing that modern parents can do more, and this is tough, and I think that this is especially tough for moms, and I'm glad that we're bringing more dads into the conversation because dads bring a nice energy into this. I think that dads are nicer to each other about this. Moms can get a bit catty with each other about this. Mommy internet can be a bit of a mean place sometimes. Um, is to get into kind of that like we're all trying to figure it out together, collaborative state, like what's working for you, because this is like kind of a black box mystery for all of us, and to collaborate and figure it out together. um and yeah, I don't think that any of us have it figured out. And sometimes I feel a bit bad when I'm talking about things on X, because there are certain things that I'm really strong on, like infants watching YouTube, where if I do have like a super strong stance on it, it's because it's just like a hard no. It's just a hard no with things like that. But other things, it's like, I don't know, maybe like we'll have to see, we'll have to figure it out. And especially from like a global cultural standpoint, like I'm always really interested in what other cultures do. And our our kids are super close in age, and we we had, when our kids were born, I was an English teacher, teaching families in Asia, teaching kids in Asia remotely. And I was talking about my kids, and I had some moms talk to me about tatami and like co-sleeping on tatami beds, and they totally sold me on it. And I think that we might have been the only people in my little town in the Ozarks that owned tatami. And the first night I cried because I had never slept on something like that. So it was so uncomfortable. And I was all in, and we got rid of our mattress before I had slept on the tatami. I'm like, I'm going to do this. Like, this is good for me. I'm going to do this. And we made a tatami room, and we co-slept on tatami grass mats with like Japanese futons for a few years. And that's how we got sleep at night with all of our little kids. And I don't know, sometimes you just have to be experimental with it. And it's like moms in Japan get like super good sleep. So let's give it a go. And it worked for us.
That's amazing. I love that. I think, yeah, I mean, that's also the cool thing about the world, and things like the internet is that there is so much to learn, and
Yeah.
there's so much to learn from each other. And like, that's one of the reasons I do this podcast because I'm like, there's just literally every day you are given moments to learn, right? And you can learn from good moments and bad moments. You can see a lot of the behavior now online. Like you go, okay, cool, that's how not to behave. Or
Yeah.
someone comes into your life and just does something or says something or shows you something that you didn't really expect. And you're like, oh wow, and there's so much to learn from each other. And I think that's super cool. And now I need to go and look up what this bed is that you said because I've never heard of it before, right? Um,
Oh, yeah. It's just like it's a woven grass mat.
yeah.
Um, it's not soft. It's like it has like a surprising amount of give. Yeah, it's if you've ever seen like a traditional like Japanese floor that is like just the
Mm.
woven grass, like that's what it is. And then you have a rolled it's like a really big pillow, and that's the futon, and you roll it up every morning and then you unroll it at night. And so we had this like grass mat floor in our room, and then everyone had their big pillow that they slept on, their big flat pillow. And that's how we slept for a few years with all of these babies. And they slept great, and we slept great, and everyone was happy. And then as soon as they slept through the night in their own beds, after that, we got rid of it. Got back in our Western mattresses. I don't know if I would do it again, but it was a fun experiment, and it was interesting. But I I was yeah, it was fun. It was fun to be able to like collaborate with that set of moms too, and see what they're doing, and to have for me to say like, oh, I'm tired. Like my daughters, they were born 17 months apart, and like yeah, my babies, they were up all night, and I was going like back and forth with them, and they're like, well, just like put them next to you. I'm like, oh, our bed's high, they'll roll off the bed. It's like, oh, well, just like everyone needs to be just like down on the floor. And it's like, oh, that's not really how it works. And they explained it all to me. I'm like, okay, I guess I'll try it. And I don't know. It was pretty neat. It was a fun time, and we've got some. I don't know. It's something that my family thought I was nuts, and everyone came over and they laid on our grass mats, and I'm like, well, this isn't comfortable, but it was great for our backs. It was great for our
Yeah.
spines.
Yeah, for sure. No, no, that's really cool. I love that. And you like, you never know. Someone who's listening to this might go, I actually really need to try that out as well.
Yeah,
So,
I
well,
I think that if we could be a little bit more like playful within reason with
yeah,
parenting, um it would make it a bit less stressful.
yeah,
I and that's one nice thing about the homeschool community is just being able to unpackage those educational expectations
mm,
and say, okay, like what do we need to get done? We need to have we need to have literacy, we need to have numeracy, we need to be learning about these things. And we need to learn about history. Do we need to do that with a textbook, or can we do that by actually going to the place? Can we learn about history by like actually traveling there and seeing it and drawing it and writing a song about it? And that's that's cool. And it's great being able to collaborate with homeschoolers in that way. And I love that energy in the homeschool community. I grew up around a lot of homeschoolers. I was surrounded by a lot of homeschoolers, and I was super jealous of their lifestyle. I wanted to be a homeschooler so bad. And they they would like text me during the school day on like our little flip phones, and they're like, "What are you doing right now?" I'm like, "I'm still studying in class." And they're like, "Oh, still? Okay." And it was just hard for them to believe. Like they're like,
Yeah.
"Oh, I was done with school forever ago." And like, what? I'm like, "Well, what are you doing right now?" It's like, "Well, I'm making a chainmail suit." Or I'm like learning to play the lute. Like, oh, well, that's neat. Good for you. They just got to do so many cool things all day.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the things that people also don't get about homeschooling is you can kind of get through things in 2 hours a day,
Oh, yeah.
and then your kid like they have the rest of the day to be creative or go and play or do
Yeah.
sport or just you know like go on like trips or whatever the story is, and
Yeah.
it really is that, isn't it? Like from all the people I've spoken to
Mhm.
and kind of research I've done, it's you can get it done pretty quickly.
Oh, very much so. And because most of the school day, like in the classroom, is taken up by classroom management. Like that's what we call it as teachers, and just getting everything sorted. Trying trying to get everything figured and get everyone sorted and figured out. And when you are homeschooling, when you're doing um I probably the easiest because there's not a lot of research around homeschooling. It's not a very well researched thing, but there's a ton of research around one-to-one tutoring. And we know what performance looks like with one-to-one tutoring, and it's amazing. Like it's kind of the highest caliber way to improve student performance. And what homeschooling is, I mean, that's the closest equivalent of what homeschooling is. And you can get a lot done in 2, 3 hours of one-to-one tutoring. And if curriculum is well designed, you can get it done in less than that. And when I was designing my phonics curriculum, um, it's I don't know. It's a full reading. I'm big on speed. I'm big on speed and just like getting it done well, just cutting the fat. I don't like wasting kids' time because I I think that everyone's here for their unique mission, and I um I don't feel like I'm in charge of that for my kids. I think that they're in charge of that. And I'm just trying to give them the basic foundational skills like reading, writing, mathematics, just like understanding the world around them to be able to accomplish that mission. And what the way that my phonics program works is it's about, I say that it's 10 minutes a day of phonics just to like give a little buffer room. It's more like two in my experience with my own kids. I don't want to like set expectations that low, but that's what it's been. And then we just like cuddle and read aloud for a while and just have that nice read aloud time to build background knowledge. And that's all you have to do to teach your kid how to read. And within the over the course of 120 days. And that's what it looks like one to one. And any parent who can read can do that within the public school system because it's an entire class of kids. And I, before I say this, I don't want to place the blame anywhere because I've been on the teacher end. I've been on the student end. I get it. And it's just like it's an impossible situation, but it's a classroom full of kids. They're all at different reading levels. Some of them have eaten breakfast, some of them haven't. Some of them got a good night's sleep, some of them didn't. You don't know what's going on at home. You don't know. I mean, everyone's coming to school in a different situation. There might have been a lockdown drill to practice for school shootings that morning. Super common thing in US schools. There might be any sort of like classroom disruption. But even like ideal day, it's one teacher teaching like 30 kids in a classroom would not be uncommon at different reading levels to read. And that's not how it works. You really need to have that one-to-one instruction. And especially when you're breaking down things like hearing a child sound out a word and being able to correct if they're pronouncing it wrong or see if they're like skipping over it, you want to be able to catch that right away. And that needs to be a one-to-one thing. And the schools that are doing that just incredibly well, because there are some public schools in the USA that are just like hitting it out of the park with that. And they have an army of volunteers that are doing one-to-one interaction with the kids, and they listen to them read and they read to the kids.
Hmm.
And because that's just like what they need, and they can get it done quick. And if you don't do that, it takes years to try to teach reading, and it doesn't really work for almost half, if not more, of the kids to actually teach that reading. And it's an inefficient system. So the way I see it, as far as scaling goes, is if you can read, and here in the US, that's about 60% of parents can read. Um, that's all.
What?
If Yeah. If you can read, then you should teach your kid how to read, because it's it's a lot to spread those resources out to the kids whose parents can't read and aren't functionally literate. Um, and those kids need to know how to read too, because it's going to compound with every generation. So if you can read, like, please, please, please teach your kid how to read, um, because there's no guarantee that just because you can read, your child will be able to read, because they might get lost in the shuffle. And there's a lot of children in the previous generation that were lost in the shuffle with reading, because this is hard to teach.
And the other thing that I really like that you say that is like sort of part of your curriculum is read with your children, right? Like so, like even though
Yeah.
you've created these awesome workbooks for them to, write and copy and all these sort of
Yeah.
things, like which is fantastic, but like almost teach them to kind of love reading. So uh,
Yeah.
like for us, we read out to our daughter every night in bed, and then like for her
Yeah.
nap time as well. And then often in the morning, like we'll wake up and I'll go, cool, we're gonna go read. Let's go read. And like we'll just sit there and snuggle and read a book
Yeah.
together out loud. And like you want to get them to love it, to enjoy
Yes.
just to enjoy. I mean, I think that's so important for anything, isn't it? If you want it to sort of carry on as like a good habit in your life, you have to kind of enjoy it. And
Absolutely.
so you don't necessarily have to say teach them, like say sit them down, but do influence them in terms of just read with them, get them to enjoy it,
Yes.
the storytelling, etc., etc. I think that's a great part of what you recommend.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, so much of it is that positive association with reading and with books. And what you're doing is perfect, because she will remember that. And even if she doesn't remember at her age, like the exact moments, she'll remember that feeling, and she'll have that positive psychological association with sitting down and reading and learning and discussing, and that critical thinking, because that was a bonding time. And if you can read to your child and discuss what you're reading together, because that's a key element to it, too is like understanding what's happening, that critical thinking element and relating to it back and forth. And even after your child can already read, continuing to read with them and have them read to you
Mm.
too. I'm my son is 9 and he's a strong reader and we're having a lot of fun this summer. He reads me a chapter and I read him a chapter and we have big discussions about it and it's like it just melts my heart because I see the work that I put in with like teaching him to love reading and I can say like, hey dude, do you want to like play Mario or do you want to read with mom? He's like, I want to read with you. It's like, yes. I mean,
Yeah.
it's so cool.
Yeah.
And he loves it. Um, and I hope that like we'll see. I don't know yet. He's my oldest, but I would love to keep it going until he's a teenager. I think that that would be really cool. I've talked to some parents who have done that, and I think that it would be a great way to connect with your teen and to be able to just like keep a family book club going.
Yeah.
And my husband reads to me actually still, and we just all read to each other. It's just a really nice bonding thing. And I having that family culture of it and having it be a super normal thing in your family is good. And also it's not just about the books as much. That's just sort of the technology of the time, I would say. Um, because it's not always been the books, it's the storytelling, right? And that's happened around the campfire. That's happened we were reading a old book called Viking Tales the other day, and they're talking about the Skalds in the winter and how they used to kidnap the the Skalds and fight over which ones were the best storytellers and how the best ones were from Iceland, the Vikings would. And it was all about the storytelling during the winter and how the some Native American tribes here would save all of their stories for the winter time. They wouldn't tell stories during the summer. They would save it just for winter because it was a special thing. And just those storytelling traditions, it's so human. And I think it's a big part of what makes us human. And having that discussion and passing that down and having that critical thinking element. And I think that it's so important to not lose that. And whatever we can do to preserve that in our families feels so important to me. Um, and I don't totally have my mind wrapped around it yet, but I just like, I feel it. It feels just really, really essential.
Yeah. You certainly have lucky kids. So
Oh,
well done
thank you.
for everything that you're doing. Uh, yes, I could talk to you about this stuff for hours because I think you have
Yeah.
just such a great outlook and so much awesome stuff to share. Uh, but I just wanted to find out if people want to say get hold of you, like what is the
Yeah.
best way if they want to get in touch? And before you say that, I just want to say like you have an amazing curriculum for the reading which you shared with me kindly, and I'm still got to actually print it out and start my daughter
Yeah.
um, through it. But also you have a curriculum for kids that are or parents that are looking to sort of start homeschooling as well. So
Yeah.
go check that out, people, because what Hannah's doing and the information she's providing, and you can buy everything on her website too. Seriously, next level. So yeah, if you want to get in touch with you, kind of what's the best way?
Thank you. Yeah. So you can find me at readtoyourkid.com. And all of my reading curriculum is actually free. So you can get that all. I just want all the kids to read. So you can get all of the individual lessons free on my website. Um, and you can find my email there. And you can also find me on X at Read to Your Kid. And yeah, email me, talk to me about books. I love talking about books.
And my last question is, what does being ridiculously human mean to you?
Oh goodness. I would say figuring out figuring out your mission and your story and doing your best to live that as a part of the greater human story.
What are you most excited about for the future? Because you sound like very optimistic about the teaching side of things. So what is exciting you about it?
I'm really excited about the future. I think that what I'm most excited about is continued collaboration and just like networking and all of us just like meeting and understanding each other more and figuring things out together. It's already so cool and I see it getting cooler and I love that we are figuring out how to solve these problems together and um yeah, oh, it just it warms my heart. Um I feel like we've been on little islands for a long time, all trying to solve problems individually. And we are entering a point of like true, authentic collaboration. And it can be a bit bumpy and it can be a bit sticky. And it's like anytime people like work as a team ever. But I think it's really worth it. And I'm excited to see what we can do with it.
I think it's so awesome. Like yeah, you look at the world now and I mean it's pretty chaotic if you go online, like it's like cheap as the world is ending, all this doom and gloom.
Yeah.
Uh but the human soul, I feel, knows really what it wants. And we're seeing this sort of like movement towards things that maybe people that are older than us, like older generations did. We're looking at ways that they did things because right now it doesn't feel right. And it's just the
Yeah.
human soul in this natural kind of like process and kind of evolution going, okay, cool. No, well, let's go find something else because where we're going now doesn't necessarily feel like the right thing to do for all of us, and I think we have to keep that optimism because there is so much awesome stuff out there, and so much for us to look forward to. But we do definitely have to come together, and we do have to sort of speak to each other more, sort out our differences, or even maybe we don't even have to sort them out. We can just try and understand them, which will go a
Yeah.
long way at least. And yeah, let's look forward to everything that is kind of like there and available to us, because the alternative is bleak, really. If you look at the world in the opposite of that, like what's the point in even living, sort of thing. So I love your outlook there, and yeah, I just wanted to say thanks so much for coming on the show. You actually wrote something on X yesterday. You did this sort of long post about being a little bit nervous about coming on the show,
Yeah.
and because you haven't spoken in a long time, and all these sort of things. But seriously, you're a natural. Like you
Oh,
must
thank you.
definitely get on more shows and spread your message. You speak super well. You've got a nice like sort of way of conveying your message, and also you're sharing amazing stuff, right? And you're trying to change the world to make it a better place. And I think that is really needed right now. So just wanted to say thanks a lot for your time and for coming on the show.
Well, thank you, and I really appreciate it. And thank you for the opportunity and for being the first show that my first ever podcast. I used to listen to podcasts on the way to school on the bus every day, and this has been kind of a dream of mine to be on one. So this was super cool.
Cool. Well, look out, Joe Rogan. She's coming. So,
Oh no.
classic. Cool. Well, thank you very much for your time. Thanks a lot, Anna.
Thank you.
Cheers.